All right, well, the people on my channel have spoken, and I guess it's time to do something non Tyler Perry related for a change. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is just my thoughts on the Monique Breakfast Club interview from this past Friday. Now, if you haven't known, Monique actually called for a Netflix boycott due to being, I guess you could say, lowballed in terms of her Netflix deal only being offered at $500,000. Afterwards, she called for a boycott due to gender equality, racial issues. Basically, a lot of the quote unquote popular movements today is being associated with her being, I guess you could say, blackballed or lowballed. And this moved to the Breakfast Club not too long afterwards. As you know, Charlemagne the God, Angela Yee, DJ Envy. I guess you could say this focused more on Charlemagne for giving her the Donkey of the Day. And if you aren't familiar, Donkey of the Day is pretty much a quote unquote title. I think that's given out on like a daily basis, Monday through Friday, based off a person who did something that was, well, something worthy enough to give them the title of Donkey. And, I will say this much. It does have a catchy jingle, Donkey of the Day. I'm talking about the donkey of the day. Yeehaw. I mean, that's kind of, how it sounds. But I actually sat back and watched the Monique interview twice already. I think it was about almost 50 minutes long. And I have to say, the first time watching it, it was a bit cringy to watch or listen to. I mean, there were times where I couldn't even look at the screen just because it was like it didn't even feel like an interview, like if you look at Kevin Hart when he came on the Breakfast Club to talk about his infidelity in his current marriage and whatnot. You can actually sit down and listen to that. I mean, most people may or may not agree with how he handled the situation, but at the end of the day, he came up there, said what he had to say, and that was pretty much it. With the Monique interview, there was a lot of tension because she pretty much came on there. Her husband was on the phone line, so pretty much they were both there. And it seemed like, the Breakfast Club, especially Charlemagne, was on the defense or, for most of the interview itself. I mean, a lot of people have, chimed in saying that, Charlemagne should be ashamed of himself for, pretty much giving a negative light on a black female who's trying to make it in the industry. People are saying Monique, because she's using these racial and gender issues on top of her personal problem to make it seem like it's something worthy of a boycott. And I mean, let me just put it this way. Looking at the interview twice, I feel like Charlemagne and Monique both made valid points. They both made valid points. The thing was, though, in my opinion, I feel like you need to watch Monique on the Sway in the Morning, another great radio show. They have a YouTube channel as well. I try to keep up to date on Breakfast Club and Sway, especially if there are people I actually want to hear, what they have to say in an interview. I feel like some of the things she said in that interview may kind of like conflict with what was said in the Breakfast Club interview. I feel like at one point, Charlemagne was talking about, well, you need to justify why you think you deserve as much as, Amy or Chris or Dave Chappelle. And she said, and her husband were like, no, we never said that we wanted that much or deserved that much money. But in a way, they kind of are, due to the fact that they keep saying, well, you keep saying that I'm a legend like Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle. But how come they have like these 8-figure deals while I only have $500,000 and Wanda Sykes only got $250,000, and just going back and forth like that. My thing with that is, let's kind of break it down. Let's talk about the boycott itself. Now, we live in a day and age where people are easily offended by things, or people feel like something is, oh, you don't like black people, oh, you're racist against white people, Mexicans, immigrants, the list goes on. And there's almost not a day where you could just go online and not see that a group of people are boycotting a company or a restaurant for whatever reason, or somebody was charged with sexual harassment. Now it's the Me Too movement. Time's up. There are just so many different things going on in the world right now, it's honestly hard to keep up with, and that's pretty sad yet incredible at the same time, that there are just so many things going on. Like, if there's any kind of social injustice, and yes, they should be addressed and dealt with, but in my opinion, I'm just a person. I'm not in the music, film, or show business industry, but I'm just talking as a regular person, kind of looking from the outside in, and I feel like when it comes to the boycott, it's something that I didn't want to participate in, because if you look at her initial video where she talked about why people should boycott Netflix due to gender and racial biases, you really need Charlemagne. I'll give him this. He made it clear where he's like, look, and that's why I gave you Donkey today. You were really unclear of why people should boycott Netflix, because it seems more of a personal situation you're going through rather than something of gender or race. Because you look at Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, black male comedians getting what, $20 million each in their contracts. Amy Sure, I can't pronounce. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with her last name. I mean, like Charlemagne, everybody has their opinion. I don't think Amy is that. Her type of comedy really isn't my kind of comedy. Not saying that she's not funny. I just don't feel like I relate to her kind of style of comedy. That's all. But you can't knock the fact that she is a female. Yes, she's white, but she's getting $13 million. I believe she initially was offered 11, but then they fought back with a counter offer for $13 million. Then Monique, of course, got the 500,000. But here's the thing. If you look at the people she's asking to boycott Netflix, we're looking at the everyday working man or woman. Netflix is one of the most inexpensive things for us to actually afford in our lives. I mean, you look at cable being what, $70 to $100+ versus Netflix, which is, I honestly don't know what the current price is. I think it's either $9.99 or $12. It's around that ballpark. Either way, it's lower than $20. Let's just put it that way: $20 a month, lower than $20 a month. Now, by us not using Netflix, what does that mean for us? I mean, I really don't know what that would accomplish. Like, let's say in the long run, Monique does get the money she deserves, because I will say this much. I grew up looking at the Parkers. I saw Monique on, I believe the Parkers was a spinoff of the Moesha show. Then I remember seeing her on Two Could Play That Game and various other roles in movies, Welcome Home, Roscoe Jenkins and whatnot. And, I'm familiar with Monique, but I want to be honest here. I feel like one of the strongest points that the Breakfast Club made, and I feel like a lot of other media venues said this, and I agree, that the industry is, especially Netflix in this particular case, is more of a what have you done for me lately kind of thing. I'm not knocking the fact that Monique is a legend. I feel like there are plenty of different legends and icons out there. Here's my best example. I feel like DJ Envy said this on a follow-up video after the interview was posted on YouTube. It was not the Donkey of the Day video, but pretty much the Breakfast Club breaks down Monique's Donkey of the Day. He said something about hip-hop, comparing, I believe, somebody else to JC. Here's how I look at it. Look at somebody like Diana Ross or Gladys Knight, who are music icons and legends in their own respects. Now, let's say there was a venue for both Diana Ross and somebody like Adele or Taylor Swift or Ariana Grande, just one of those individuals. If you put those two side by side, I feel like, it's pretty obvious that somebody like Swift or Adele would be offered more money than Diana Ross. That's not taken away from the fact that she's a legend, but you look at who's current, who's going to draw in a lot of people, a huge crowd, a huge view. That's pretty much how I look at it. And when it comes down to Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, and Amy, those people have been working their butts off on tours. Amy, again, not a big fan of her comedy, but the fact she sold out Madison Square Garden, had a major tour, best-selling book, a hit movie. Yes, it might not be as big as Almost Christmas, but my thing with that is I thought Almost Christmas was a pretty funny movie. I'm not going to lie. I feel like Monique was my favorite part of that movie. I just like her dynamic with who was it? DJ Young Fly, the young cat that was trying to hit on her. But at the same time, I get that she's trying to come across humbly, but it feels like she was trying to, warrant the success of that movie on her. But you look at the fact that Gabrielle Union, I know Carrie Hilson had a little recurring role, JB Smoove, DJ Young Fly, Danny Glover, just to name a few of the stars in that film. And I feel like when it comes down to that was probably one of the biggest Monique roles that I recall her in since Precious came out several years ago. So you also look at the fact that why are people boycotting Netflix? Like, why would they? Like, if Monique gets the money and whatnot, what would that do for us as an individual? Like, if I boycott Netflix, the only thing I can see happening is myself losing something that I can afford, that I can watch movies on the TV. Because when your message is, I want everybody to boycott Netflix because they offered me $500,000. To the everyday woman, man, $500,000 is a game changer. That's enough to pay off my student loans, my car, put down for a house. I'll have money in the bank for quite some time. I'm a single man, no wife, no kids. So $500,000 would be a blessing. That would be amazing. So I feel like her initial approach was not the right approach. It's just my personal opinion on that. Now, when it comes to Donkey of the Day, I feel like that is something that I will admit that research should be done before you label somebody that title. Because I will say this much, Donkey of the Day is for everybody. White people, black people, any race, any gender. There have been various people on Donkey of the Day. I just feel like Monique coming on The Breakfast Club just to get even though it wasn't said, it was pretty much like her being angry about getting that label and wanting a retraction. A retraction was never said, but she just wanted to know why she was labeled that. And if you look carefully at the interview, again, both sides, Charlemagne and Monique, made valid points. But the thing is, Monique is like a smooth talker. Like, she was making valid points, but I can't really count the number of times I can't even recall her actually answering a question. That was the thing. It seemed like every time somebody asked her a question, she was like, okay, now do you know so-and-so and how they went through? I didn't feel like any questions were being addressed. I feel like that's why this interview was a bit uncomfortable for me to actually listen to, because it seemed like the tension was there. There were really no questions being addressed. I think Charlemagne addressed why he gave her Donkey of the Day, which was the whole, justification of what have you done for me lately, using like Me Too movements and all these racial things into the mix to make it seem like this is something we should be doing. But it really does seem like a personal situation. And I feel like Netflix isn't really fazed by that. Again, I'm just a person looking on it inside out. So, outside in. So I don't have like all the major numbers. But I feel like when it comes to Monique, does she have that drawing power? I think DJ Envy said it best. And I think he even said, like, the people on Monique's Periscope said that he's the only one in the Breakfast Club they like. And he said, like, hey, these are, said to be rumors from people you've worked with in the past that have labeled you as difficult. And let's say if I was, I'm a businessman, and if I was running a company and I saw you on the list of people to hire, I wouldn't hire you for as much as somebody like Dave Chappelle, due to your reputation, because that reputation precedes you. So you wouldn't be offered as much as somebody like a Chris Rock or Dave Chappelle. But the thing is, honestly, the bigger question is, how many people out there are actually supporting Monique? Why hasn't anybody stepped up? And I feel like, the fact that she had that thing, again, it's a situation that happened with Lee Daniels and Oprah Winfrey, Tyler Perry. And if you look at the fans of Oprah, Tyler, Lee Daniels and whatnot, that's a pretty big chunk of people. So when you look at that number of people versus one woman with a fan base, it's not going to look so good. I really don't think it's going to go anywhere. I hope she gets a special out there, but I'm going to be honest here. I'm more well versed on Monique and TV shows and movies. And looking back at her past specials, when I was a kid, I believe the one that was on Netflix was the I Could Have Been Your Cellmate or something along those lines. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm talking from the specials and shows and whatnot I've watched back before Monique had that drastic weight loss. I'd say about 70 or 80% of her jokes had to do with skinny, quote unquote, bitches. And then I remember she kind of disappeared for a while, and then it was reported, oh, Monique came back strong. She lost a lot of weight. I was happy for her and all, but I was a bit concerned because from my memory as a child, teenager and whatnot, seeing Monique, most of her jokes, stand up and whatnot, and material had to do with, I'm a black, big, beautiful woman, and I'm confident in that. And then it pretty much, her material was steered towards skinny women and whatnot, and how talking about going to a gym when I want to go to a Krispy Kreme and things of that nature. So when she lost that weight, I was like, okay, I wonder what kind of material she's going to come with now, because she quote unquote became the person she used to stab at. Kind of like Taylor Swift, another example, when she first came out with music. I'm not going to lie, I'm a big Taylor Swift fan, especially the old Taylor Swift. You know, curly hair, glittery guitar, talking about, you know, like the mean girls, the cheerleader girls, the evil girls, the girls that date around and whatnot, and then talking about being the victim and dating all these guys who, you know, really weren't who they said they were. And then, you know, when she got straighter hair, cut her hair, got rid of the guitar, she kind of became the person she, you know, wrote about. So basically, she had this one persona to get her foot in the door, but then she transitioned into the person she used to talk about. In a way, with Monique is kind of the same thing. But I think the major thing to take away here is, did they try to renegotiate or, you know, up the deal? I feel like the biggest thing that is a problem, aside from the $500,000, I do admit, I really do think Monique is worth more than $500,000. Would I pay her 20 million or 13? Most likely not, due to the fact that it's all about drawing power. I feel like if Monique, and again, these were my initial thoughts before I found out about the whole, oh, well, if you sign this deal, then you can't do any comedy things or tours for like 2 years. And that's why it's important. Whenever a big story like this comes out, I try my best to kind of wait 2 to 3 days for the story to be out there, because as soon as something is trending, you get all these clickbait articles and whatnot. So I wanted to wait to see what the real story was before I tried to post anything or do a video. Now, I feel like when I first heard the story about 500,000, I thought, well, maybe it's not that much of a big deal, because my attitude is, when somebody says I'm only worth so much, or, you know, my limit is so high, I do my best to prove them wrong. Like, I would have taken that $500,000, did one hell of a special that would have got way more views. And I mean, it may not have gotten as many views as like Amy or Dave or Chris, but it would have been a special so good that people would have been talking. The reviews would have been stellar. That way I could go to Netflix and like, well, you see now, $500,000 is all I'm worth, huh? Why don't you look at those numbers, see what you think now? That would have been a great way to say, hey, you know what? I got this chump change, but I can use this for my own special, start a tour, and then the notoriety or the advertisement from Netflix. I feel like Netflix would have been a great outlet for the younger generation to be more aware of who Monique is. I mean, literally, I'm 26. I feel like the younger generation here aren't as familiar with Monique as they are with, let's say, a Kevin Hart or a Chris Rock or a Dave Chappelle, because the Parkers, and if I'm not mistaken, was like her real only sitcom out there. It was pretty much her sister, her Moesha, her Martin, and that's really not on the air like it used to be. So I feel like young kids most likely don't really know or are familiar with who Monique is. So using Netflix would have been a fabulous way of getting her name out there. So if she went on a tour, then her tickets would probably just, you know, easily sell out. But then I learned about the whole situation with the 2-year contract. Yeah, that is a problem. I would definitely have renegotiated for higher than $500,000, because if you're telling me, okay, you're going to be on the bench for 2 years, but here's $500,000, then that's a problem. I feel like there should have been some kind of negotiation where, you know what, either up to $500,000, or you can give me this up front, and then we can make a deal. If my special hits over a certain amount of views that you only anticipate me making, then I should be paid more, something along those lines. Oh, sorry about that. I had to get my computer charger. But when it comes down to it, let's go back to the Breakfast Club. I feel like it was a tense interview. I feel like I really can't say the whole Charlemagne and Leonard situation. I'll put it this way. She came in there like an auntie, like, you know, I found a tweet that said, like, you can tell based off the glasses that Monique was wearing, the Breakfast Club was in trouble. And another tweet is like, Monique reminds me of that grandma whose house you don't want to go to after church. I mean, it was funny stuff, but I'm not really here to poke fun at anybody. It's really about my thoughts on the situation. I feel like, you know, if I was in a job and I had a certain title or I had a certain name for myself, then I would want to be called by that name unless I gave the person permission to call me, you know, something other than sir or whatever my title was. So I get the fact that she was coming up there like, you know, auntie, calling him Leonard and whatnot. And I think DJ Envy even pointed out that it was a bit disrespectful to not call him Charlemagne, because that is his name on the air. And then later on, Charlemagne said he didn't have a problem with that. But you know, that, I mean, to me, that kind of like made me kind of, you know, look at the screen a little funny when I saw the interview. And then the end of the interview, not when the radio was off, but the camera was rolling, they talked about, you know, the reference to, what was it, 12 Years a Slave and whatnot. But I just don't feel like there was any kind of love in that interview. I know they started off, they gave each other a hug, said it was a conversation, nothing but love here. But the tension, I feel like there were really no kind of jokes and whatnot. Like I saw on the Ellen DeGeneres show when Oprah came out to surprise Tiffany Haddish. I'm sorry if I pronounced the name wrong. And she joked around about how I wrote you a letter. Oh, but I lost it. Oprah said that. But then I wrote you 6 more. It was kind of funny because that was like a sensitive moment or a little tense, but it was a happy moment that has some humor thrown in there. If there was some humor in there and the Breakfast Club interview, I think would have been able to hit home. Again, looking at the Kevin Hart the Kevin Hart interview where pretty much it was like 40, almost like an hour long about him talking about him cheating on his wife. There was some humor in there. Yes, the situation really wasn't joke worthy, but at the same time, it was lighthearted around a serious situation. So that's an interview I could watch a few times over because there were times where I could just get some laughs and they're like, my wife, you're my rib. And then Charlamagne's like, what are your favorite sides to go with your rib? You know, things like that. When it comes to this interview, it just seemed like it was really tense. There really wasn't a lot of love there. I think Angela Yee almost got shot down a couple times, especially when she brought up the people who were giving Monique negative reviews from a photo shoot they did, and she was like, well, baby, if you don't say the names, save it for the playground. I'm like, oh snap. And let me just put it this way. I think the energy that's being placed on the boycott, I think Angela even said this in a the Donkey of the Day video. It's like it seems like she's going on a boycott tour instead of a comedy tour. I will say this much in terms of Monique. I feel like everybody knows her now. Like, you know, people who may not have recognized Monique or remembered her because it's been a while since she's been in the spotlight in terms of a major like comedy special or TV show or whatnot, they know who Monique is. So if this is a publicity ploy to get her name out there, it definitely worked. I do feel like obviously there is gender bias anywhere you go, racial bias, whether it's workplace, movie, Hollywood, whatever the case may be. But I feel like in this particular scenario, I don't think it's something that I would have blown up to this proportion. Like I would have handled this behind closed doors. And I get that they were I believe, you know, her and her husband said that they were trying to make phone calls, but nobody was answering. They hung up and they weren't able to renegotiate, I guess. But I feel like this is the kind of thing I wouldn't want to put my name attached to in terms of if I were Monique, I wouldn't want to, you know, blast a major company like Netflix, because the bigger question is, and I think Angela brought this up at the end, so what's next, Monique? Oh, we're just going to keep on fighting, babe. Like this special is going to happen. We're going to keep on fighting. But my question is, what if Netflix doesn't want to renegotiate? What if Netflix renegotiates, but it's not the money you want? Will another network take you? That's my major question, because Netflix, if people didn't want to believe the bad reputation due to Tyler, Oprah, and Lee Daniels, then they're definitely going to know about the reputation that comes from this Netflix situation, because it feels like most of the interviews she's in, there's really not a lot of, again, love there. It just feels like it's the same story every time. And what's the like, I want to know what is going to be the resolution of this. Like, what would satisfy Monique and her husband? Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, she should fire her husband because it's bad business decision. Like, that's not my place to say. They're married. He's the manager. Obviously, I'm guessing she chose him to be in that position, so that's her call, not mine. But I will say that calling your manager daddy on the radio during an interview is a bit unprofessional. I feel like that was another reason that made me kind of uncomfortable, because I feel like, you know, even though you're trying to shut down a situation for being called Donkey of the Day, and you came in there poised, you had a calm demeanor, I don't think that calling your manager daddy, even though that's your husband, over the radio was professional. That's just my opinion on that. And I just look at the situation as a whole and say, if I were to boycott Netflix, what would that do? Like, you know, if she got the money that she felt she deserved as a legend, would some of that money go back to charity or whatnot? Because here's the thing. That's why I feel like it's a personal situation. She wants us to boycott Netflix due to being lowballed with $500,000. And then from there, she states that it has to do with gender and racial bias. And then at the end of the day, if she gets the money that she I wouldn't say wants, but she feels she deserves, like what's the end game in that? Like, you know, what would that money go towards? Like, if it's not going for a positive cause and whatnot, then at the end of the day, what am I boycotting Netflix for? So this video is I wouldn't say longer than I expected, but I just wanted to get the ball rolling. I just wanted to get my thoughts on there out there in regards to the situation. I feel the interview itself, by the time of this recording, is over 1.5 million views on Netflix. I mean, excuse me, not on Netflix. 1.5 million views on the Breakfast Club YouTube page. So I don't know. This could be one of the biggest Breakfast Club interviews up there with Birdman. Put some respect on it. But overall, you know, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think Monique deserved Donkey of the Day? I will say this much, that Donkey of the Day is a bit humorous, but at the same time, the Breakfast Club is a major media outlet, especially with black culture, black people. I feel like Donkey of the Day is something that should only be given, you know, somebody should only be given that title after thorough research was made. And I will admit that that was one thing that I feel like caught the Breakfast Club off guard, because they had some of the details, but they didn't have all of the details. That's why I felt like it was a very back and forth interview. But on both sides, I mean, especially Monique's side, I just didn't like how no questions were really answered. I feel like if you're on a Breakfast Club, a major media outlet, a platform, I would want to make it clear why I want you to boycott Netflix, why I want to make it clear that I am a legend and this and that. And I mean, I'm not even going to talk about The View, because that Whoopi Goldberg thing, that was pretty, wow, that was interesting to say the least. But you know, hey, what do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, to all of my subscribers out there, this is probably one of the few non-Tyler Perry related videos I've done on the channel. I would love to do more things like this on this channel, because we're almost at 20,000 subscribers, so I feel like this will get more views. But I also have my other channel, Young Buck 888. A link's going to be in the description below, and you also see a little icon on the screen now you can click on in order to subscribe. So if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll talk to you later.